Welcome everyone to the latest in a series of development and support webinars delivered by the NIHR Academy. My name is Sarah and I work at the Academy as a Senior Development and Support Manager. This webinar, Agile and Flexible Working, is delivered in conjunction between the NIHR Academy and Capfinity, our leadership programme partners, and will be facilitated by Jenny Ainsworth. Jenny is enthusiastic about helping people get the best out of themselves and others. Jenny loves to inspire and motivate people through encouraging, supporting and stretching their thinking. Jenny, I'm going to hand over to you now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sarah. Great to be with you again today here at NIHR. We've only got an hour together. We've got a great session planned for you. I really encourage you to get involved, maximise the time here today. So, before we do anything else, I want to start with a bit of an activity. I'm going to show you some words on the screen, okay? And all I want you to do, sounds a bit silly, but all I want you to do is to say the words out loud, okay? So get ready. Say those words out loud wherever you're sitting. Now, that was fairly easy, wasn't it? Although you might have some neighbours at your desk wondering why they're reeling off a list of colours. Let's leave them to wonder. Now, I'm going to give you a second set of words this time. They are also a list of colours, but this time I'd like you to read out loud the colour of the word, okay? The colour of the word, not the actual word, but the colour of the word. Now, I'm wondering which was easiest, round one or round two? Just let me know in chat which was easiest, round one or round two. Yeah, 100%. Of course it was round one. Of course it was. Absolute no-brainer. Now, this is based on the Stroop test, named after John Ridley Stroop, and it was he first published this effect way back in 1935. So what most of us experience was what we call selective attention theory. So where the colour recognition of a word, as opposed to just simply reading the word, that requires more attention. We cannot simply work on autopilot. Okay, now what's interesting is when we're thinking about that in terms of autopilot, if I was to say to you, do you work in autopilot? You'd probably think, no, absolutely not. Of course I don't. But when something's worked in the past for us, it's easy to assume that that approach will work again. And sometimes it will. And it's fair to say, actually, that autopilot is vastly useful at times because it helps us preserve energy, helps us get things done efficiently, helps us having to think about every single thing all of the time. But in order to run a really successful lean operation, that sort of autopilot and always doing the same thing starts to have a less effective outcome as we go on, because actually no two situations are the same. You know, NIHR is constantly moving, constantly changing and adapting. And as leaders, you need to do the same. So if you think of a boat needing to make a journey from A to B, you make your plan, you steer the ship, you know you're going in, let's say, northeast direction, you know you're going from France to Spain, you know you're going at 15 knots. Sounds like I know a lot about boating, doesn't it? But it's very unlikely it will be smooth sailing. The sea is unpredictable. You don't know what's going on beneath the surface. A storm could come along. And so it's the same thing for us at NIHR. You need to be ready for all of those things that you can't see, that you can't predict, and change course if and when you need to. Sail around the obstacles, go to a new direction, destination, go in a slightly different direction, maybe pause occasionally to readjust. So as leaders, you're constantly navigating yourself, your crew, your teams through the ebbs and flows of the organization. So what we need to do is to be ready to adapt our approach to those changing seas. And actually, if we're being honest, perhaps even more so in the health sector, you as health managers have got to be agile, because you've got very specific characteristics of the health service, such as, the cross-functional conversations you need to have, aligning different types of organisations in the private, public and charity spaces. There's lots of different things going on. So we're going to work through this flex model today, helping you be more flexible as and when change comes. Okay, so we're going to look at fixing your foundations, leveraging uncertainty, embracing change, and extending your inner circle. So let's start, first of all, with F, fix your foundations. So the first thing we need to do is to do that, exactly that. Make sure that we are building our houses on rock and not on sand, and having some really good, strong foundations. If we don't have that baseline well-being and balance right, we won't have the capacity to endure change, to deal with uncertainty, and we definitely won't be able to lead our teams through them. So having our foundations really strong and solid means ensuring we've got that strong baseline from which to work, where we feel we can perform at our best. And if we think about the difference between having foundations and not, it's a bit like saying when we don't have foundations, that's when we're adrift, using this same at sea analogy. But when we've got those solid foundations, we've got that agility to move. And being adrift is exactly as it sounds. We feel out of control, no direction. We're experiencing change as a real challenge, and it can be really quite unnerving about how it's going to work out in the end. So we want to have a much more agile mindset, where we're a bit more conscious about what's going on. We are more considered in how we respond to things, as opposed to that knee-jerk, that autopilot reaction which we've talked about. And so therefore, it brings confidence in the path ahead. Even if we can't see the full path, we feel confident in ourselves and in our teams that we will be able to navigate it. So we need to set down some anchors. And these anchors can be linked to lots of things, such as energy, how we like to do things, our preferences, having good boundaries, being aware of our strengths, all sorts of things like that. And part of fixing your foundations and those anchors is about knowing when you are and when you aren't at your best at work, and therefore when and where you've got capacity to be agile or you haven't. So this energy curve, it's a way that we can map out our energy levels throughout the day. And it can help us really know, when am I at my best? When have I got most energy to be really tackling the challenging things and managing our own tasks in a way that can bring out the best in us? Now, I'm just going to play cynic for a minute, because there may well be people on that saying, well, I'm best in the morning, but all my meetings get booked in the afternoon. Fine. There's absolutely things that we haven't got control of, in, certain meetings that we have to attend to, certain things that have to be done at a certain time. So I appreciate that. This is about the things outside of that. You've got your business as usual, the stuff that you know that you need to get done. And the stuff that you can get done really quite quickly. And the other things that you need full concentration, really to immerse yourself in. These are the things that I'm talking about, the things that you can decide when to do them. And so everybody's brain and everybody's body is different, which means our days look different to everybody else. There's some people that think, oh, I can't get going until 10 o'clock in the morning. Other people think, no, I'm at my best first thing. That's when I need to tackle and just have the quiet to tackle the difficult stuff. We're all different. And when we understand how our energy is distributed across the day, we can tap into the best places for our productivity. and work out how to align our skills and our energy so we can start to map those tasks out accordingly. So the things that require most of us, most of our thinking and our brain power, we do when we're operating at our best. So I just wonder, for you, just reflect, do you know on reflection where you have your most energy? Just pop into chat. Is it early morning, mid-morning? Some people are even in the evening. Manuja, 7 till 11. You're right. I found my tribe. I'm the same as you. I'm the same as you, Manuja. Artie, yeah, mid-morning. Jade, mid-morning, and Holly and Amanda. So if any of you are in the same team, maybe you need to do the difficult stuff mid-morning. Late afternoon. Oh, you see, I'm terrible at late afternoon. Mid-morning. Mid-morning and late evening. Love that, Joe. So again, that recognition of having the different peaks and troughs throughout the day. Great stuff. Lisa, in the morning, it was afternoon, but after early starts with children, it changed. I remember that. I remember exactly that happening to me. And yeah, Emma's saying I'm not quite sure. Some of you may be really aware, some of you may not. But what I would encourage you to do is to have a think about this as we continue going through and after, because what it means is, yeah, and Jerry, you're saying you get a second breath as well, similar to Joe, exactly. So when you're clear on where you get more energy from, that's when you can think, I'm going to leave tackling that or preparing for that difficult conversation to then, because I really need to focus then. I'll box off the other stuff when I'm a bit lower down. It's a bit like the red energy, that's when you're at the lowest, the greens where you're at your highest. And wherever you can, if you can work that out, that means that you are on your way to increasing your agility to deal with the things that are coming your way. So that fixing your foundations, getting those fixed in, that's really important, and recognizing your anchors, the things that drive us, the things that motivate us, they can help us find our flow. And once we fix our find our flow, it gives us the capacity to be a bit more agile. And this is about thinking, okay, let's have a look at the things that we have got within our control. There's an awful lot that we haven't. Today is about what can I do? What can I do? Let me focus on that. So first of all, we've just talked, we've got energy anchors. So that's getting clear on when you're most energized, when you've got things just come to you so much more easily. So have a think about that, because as we say there, it gives you the capacity to embrace more and to bounce back. But there are other foundations that we can fix as well. Strengths. Now, we talk a lot in Capfinity and with you at NIHR about what your real strengths are. These aren't the things that we use in a CV or a bio or a LinkedIn statement, the things like we say, passionate, motivated, results orientated, team player, professional. They're a given. These strengths are about what really, really makes you tick. What are the things that you're good at? What are the things that are quite effortless for you? What are the things that energize you when you're using them? And I wonder if there are any tasks or any strengths that you can think of that really you can tap into that help you with managing change. If there are any that you can think of, just pop them into chat. Any things that you think, I know that helps me when I'm facing the unknown, or I know that this is something that I tap into that's really useful, that helps me when I'm trying to navigate everything, all the different plates that I'm dealing with. If you're aware of them, then absolutely let's share those. But getting clear on what your strengths are is really important. Heather, multitasking and being able to reprioritize. Yes, that's really interesting, because very often there are many people who are not good at reprioritizing. It's almost like once it's been set in stone, that's what we've said that we're going to do. And so that they do not have that flexibility, they're too rigid to the plan. So being able to reprioritize is a wonderful skill because you don't get as emotionally hung up, and it's the emotions that can be really draining. So that's a great one. Good at assessing complicated information quickly. That's a fabulous strength. So you can quickly cut through complexity. Being organized, Barbara, amazing. Problem solving and planning, Steph, yes. Understanding what's urgent versus what's important, because a lot of people say everything's urgent, don't they, Chris? So it's cutting through to find out what's actually important. Good. Organising my work list, absolutely. Making links between seemingly unlinked situations, thinking ahead, wonderful. These are great. Taking a breath, concentrating, reorganising according to priority, looking at things in a positive way, only worrying about what's within our control, letting everything else go. Great skill and strength, Louise. Not taking on more than I can manage, being logical. There's some great things coming through. Good. So again, this is about that. Who used the phrase taking a breath? Can't find it now. There, Lisa. This is exactly it. Take that breath and then think, okay, what needs to happen? We've got all this going on. I can't go into overwhelm. What needs to happen? And taking that breath and looking at it in a non-emotional way. Fantastic. So we've got strengths. We've also got our preferences, the way that we like to do things, things, how we like to, whether it's problem solve, whether we're very creative, whether we like reflection time, collaboration time. For me, I need a few minutes just to gather my thoughts. I'm very quick at gathering my thoughts and I can think on my feet, but I like to do that on my own. I like to just to think, okay, hang on, right, what's going on? Let me just reprioritize before I go into the actual collaborating and bouncing off other people. So there's lots of different things. Oh, sorry, Stacey. Yeah, I'm not sure whether Stacey's just said, can we change the chat so you can see the answers coming through? We might not be able to do it. That's my fault with involving you in the chat. Sorry. I like to get loads of chat going so you can feel you can contribute, but I'm not sure whether you can see it. Forgive me. I'll try and keep it to a minimum so it's not irritating for you. So it's really finding and reflecting on how am I when I operate at my best. When you know what that looks like, you're able to tap into it in a much better way, so that enables you to feel stronger when you're leaning into all the change that you're dealing with. So let's consider something that perhaps we haven't looked at as much just yet, which is the psychological impact of uncertainty. I think it's important to recognise that this discomfort happens. It happens to us all. And we need to be aware of the discomfort that comes from change to prepare ourselves for sort of predictable uncertainty ahead. Now, I'm going to give you a situation, and then I'm going to bring up a poll, okay? Imagine you are sitting facing a machine that can give you an electric shock. Would you prefer to be told that definitely in the next 10 seconds you are going to be shocked? Or would you prefer to be told you've got a 50% chance of being given an electric shock? So let me bring that poll up for you. So would you prefer to have 100% chance of knowing that it's coming in the next 10 seconds, or just a 50% chance you're not sure whether it's going to come or not, so it's in or out? I love it. The poll should be on your screen. It should be on your screen in front of you. This is really interesting. Oh, it's getting a bit Brexity in the answers at the moment. Wowzers. So we're nearly there. Okay. Flipping heck. It nearly is Brexit. 54% of you have said, just tell me that I'm getting it and then I know what I can prepare. And 46% of you have said, I'll take the 50-50 chance and fingers crossed. Okay, really, really interesting. Really interesting. So you can see there, 54-46. Now, what does all this mean? Well, it means that actually there's a bit of difference here in terms of the results of these sorts of polls in the past. A study found that when you had a 50% chance of receiving a shock, it was much more stressful when people were attached to, the wires and checking heartbeats and all of that. Those people that said, okay, I'll take my chances 50-50, they were far more stressed, higher levels of anxiety, breathing much higher up, much shallow breathing, all of that sort of stuff. Whereas the people who knew they were going to get an electric shock were much less stressed. So essentially what that was showing was, yeah, and Sarah's put into the chat, I prefer the certainty of knowing, which is exactly that. You've fallen into my trap, Sarah. In other words, uncertainty is actually more painful and more uncomfortable than physical pain. So, in practice, what this means is we tend to avoid the unknown. We stick with the status quo. I know what I'm playing with here. I know what I'm doing. I'm dealing with. And Louise has put in chat, if you know what you're dealing with, you can put coping mechanisms in place. Absolutely. Our challenge is that coping mechanism might have worked. Your solution might have worked previously. It might have worked 9 times out of 10. But what we are encouraging you to look at is we're constantly evolving and constantly moving forward. And whilst it worked in the past, even many times, is that still the right thing to do? So rather than sticking with what we know and that status quo and what feels safe, it's about thinking, come on, let's just brainstorm some things that we could do. I know we're not clear, but let's just lean into the uncertainty, and that can be really, really helpful. Priya has asked me a question. Is there a male-female difference in response and stress levels in that study? Priya, I haven't got that information. I'm sure there will be in terms of some breakdown. It would be really interesting to find out, wouldn't it, in that difference? I haven't got it, sadly. So, as leaders, and Stephanie, you've alluded to this in your chat, you have to be constantly ready for the unknown in the NHS and academia and NIHR. You're constantly exposed to it. It's predictably unpredictable. So we always need to be ready to change direction, because as managers and leaders, you're constantly being exposed to the unknown and to uncertainty, political changes, funding cuts, restructures, moving budgets, new technologies, partners coming in with competing objectives. These things happen. A lot of them are predictable, but they still can be unexpected. They still can be that curveball. And as managers and leaders, we need to leverage this uncertainty to our advantage, so we're ready to change direction quickly and lead our teams through it. So this is about not being super rigid with your approach. And for some of you, I'm going to call it, for some of you in particularly in academia, in research, you like things to be really buttoned down because that's part of your job. And when you buttoned it down, that's what we're going to do. And so there can be a real mindset, psychological challenge to adjusting your sails if new things come in, and we can get frustrated by that. But the more that we can just let it go a little bit and move with the curveballs, we will become less stressed, much more able to look at better ways of dealing with the curveballs rather than thinking, no, we set this plan and we need to stick with it. So it's about being comfortable with the uncomfortable. So ideally, we'd love to be prepared for everything all the time, every small problem, every curveball. But you know, that's unrealistic. We can't be prepared for everything. We can, though, prepare ourselves for some obstacles that might come our way. And the mindset here is the most important thing. So to help us feel more prepared for the unexpected, we're sticking with the sea and the ocean analogy. We can use waves and tsunamis as a tool. So imagine that you're setting sail on a boat. The ideal is that you'll have a small breeze pushing you along the way. So no problems at all. Everything's nudging you along in the right direction. But realistically, there will be some small waves. But these are predictable problems to deal with. Okay. So I've just given you some examples here. A small set of results for an ongoing research problem have turned out to be unreliable. Oh, it's a bit of a pain, but it's always sort of tearing our hair out now. Or there's a bit of tension going on. It's not ideal, but you know, it's manageable. Or team member goes off sick for a couple of days. It's frustrating, but we can work around it. So those are the waves. Okay. Then we've got the tsunamis. These are all around the unpredictable curveballs. So research just gets cut. That's it. No more research. No more funding. Sorry. And you think, oh, now what? How do we continue? Or a key member of your team needs to take a lot of time off work. Or, you know, there's been a tech update. We've lost some critical research data. These things can happen. They can absolutely happen. Holly has put in chat, I learned project management amongst the military. A regularly repeated phrase was, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So that's really interesting. Yeah, really interesting. So what this is, we call this a pre-mortem tool, and it uses prospective hindsight. It's the opposite of a post-mortem. So the idea is that you imagine you've completed the project and it was a complete and utter failure. And then you identify all the things that went wrong and determine how you would deal with them. So what you're saying is you're predicting the risks, you're predicting the waves, you're predicting the tsunamis. So it's even things like, oh, I think that's going to take us a month to do. Shall we bake in 6 weeks just in case people go off sick, just in case? Let's bake in 6 weeks for that, the deadline. It's that kind of thing. We could be notorious in underestimating how long things can take. So it might be baking in some extra time. It might be putting some extra nuts and bolts in there. So when you do embark on the project or whatever it is, you're far more likely to have identified what could go wrong. It is absolutely, yeah, risk assessment, contingency planning, all of those sorts of things, Steph. And sorry, I'm calling you Steph. You may hate that. Forgive me, Stephanie. So this is preempting as much as we possibly can. As much as we possibly can. And it's the small things and the big things. And I encourage you to look at the small things, because very often we look at what are the big things that could knock us off. But actually the small things are really irritating. So let's just be mindful of those in that pre-mortem, that contingency planning as well. So let's move on to considering how we can actually be better at embracing change. We know it's going to come at some point, so why not get better at leaning into it? Now, we rarely get car sick when we're driving. This is because we're in control. We know when we'll change direction and accelerate, and we can prepare for the potholes in the road. Very often, as managers and leaders, we might feel much more in control, much more comfortable with the change or switching direction, because we've probably been involved a lot earlier in the process. So we've had time to sort of get our heads around it. But when we share things with our team members, they can get a little bit more fraught. And then we can be sort of, screwing our faces up a little bit, thinking, why are you getting so stressed? Forgetting that we've had time and to work through it. And we feel now that we're in more control. So we've had more clarity. We've been more involved. As captain of the ship, you are in control, and it's important that you make sure your crew know what they're doing, and can share with them what you can share with them. Otherwise, they get confused, they get stressed, and one of the worst things that I hate dealing with, they get resentful. And I have been resentful before when I've thought, nobody's talking to me, nobody's giving me a second thought about how this is impacting us. We're expected to carry on doing X, Y, Z. I haven't got a clue what we're supposed to be doing. This is so unfair. And when you feel resentful, it really eats away. So we need to minimize that as leaders and managers, because we know what that feels like, and we'd hate to put that onto anybody else, wouldn't we? So we can be set up for change ourselves, but if our teams aren't, that they'll struggle to adjust. So we need to help them with that. And why is it not moving? There we go. And there are three key things to embracing change. First of all, it's saying, look, this is good. Every time we're learning a new way of doing something, every time we come together and think, right, what are we going to do? How are we going to lean into this? We're creating all those neural pathways. We are literally expanding our brains. This is good for us. This is good. Might not feel good, but it's good for our brains. It's great for us as a team. One thing that I found worked really well with my team members was to say, okay, we've got this situation. I'm going to be absolutely transparent and say, I haven't got ideally the clarity that I personally would like. And I'm sure that you would like as well. But the one thing I have absolute belief in is that between us as a team, we have got the strength, we have got the talent, we've got the experience to work it out and how we're going to deal with it, because we've done it before. And that real sense of saying, as a team leader, I believe in you and I believe in us. That really brings confidence. It brings that sense of, yeah, come on, we're all in it together, all for one and one for all. It's really, really helpful to do that as a leader. And, dealing with change is important to stay alive. You think about, I'll ask you the question, when was the last time you went to Blockbuster and took a video out? Crazy, isn't it? When you think about it. Blockbuster famously failed to be flexible. They stuck to that physical shop model, everybody going, getting the videos, getting the DVDs, and they lost out to future focused businesses like Netflix. But if you think of the NHS in COVID-19, they absolutely embraced change. They had to change their approach in order to be more flexible and to allow for faster decision making, things like daily stand-ups or changing the structure of hierarchy, introducing sprint projects. So, even a massive machine like the NHS proved that it was agile to deal with COVID. So it's really important that we remind ourselves that whilst change feels uncomfortable, especially for those of us who aren't involved in the initial decision-making process, it's something that is always going to happen. It can be very, very good for us, and it can really sort of knit us together as a team. So let's lean into that. And what we can do is use this model, this unfreeze, change and refreeze model. It's a great model for ensuring we're set up and adaptable for change. It comes from Kurt Lewin, and it's to do with agile leadership, because driving and promoting change it's not about just saying this is good for us, how are we going to do it. It's also about being the change and driving the change ourselves so other people will follow. Agile managers and leaders focus on building and sharing a common understanding and purpose with their team and with their organization. So we've got a clear vision of change that's meaningful and helpful. So this Kurt Lewin change model, it's a change management model. It can be used to help navigate teams and organizations through transitions, anything from cultural things, systems, structures, processes, all of those sorts of things. And it comes from the idea that an ice block can't be forced into a new shape without breaking. We've got to melt it first, which is the unfreeze. We've got to pour it into a new mold, which is the change. And then we freeze it again in that new shape, refreeze. So when we unfreeze, this is about demonstrating the need for change and getting buy-in from people, from those people who it will impact. So it might be getting buy-in from stakeholders. It might be creating a sense of urgency. We need to do this and we need to do this now, because otherwise, you know, further down the line, it's going to cause us much more pain. It might be addressing concerns, you know, with transparency, framing the change so people really understand not just what we're doing, but why, all those sorts of things. So that's what we do at the unfreeze stage. Then we're going to change. So this is about how do we implement what it is that we need to do and making things as smooth as possible, being as proactive as we can about things that might crop up, which we mentioned earlier on in terms of the pre-mortem. So setting up sessions, making sure people have got time to talk things through and work things through. Remember, if people start asking questions, they're not necessarily being negative. They're just trying to make sense of it. So create the space to listen, to take on board feedback, create the space to have the conversations about what's working, what isn't, and celebrate small victories, you know, as we nudge forward. And then finally, the refreeze, that's about, you know, normalizing the change back into everyday work and how we do things. And we might do things here as well, like maybe rewarding early adopters, really, you know, shining the light on those people who have been great champions and nudged us forward. Absolutely continue to collect feedback here, you know, where we can set up metrics for success, all of those sorts of things. So it's a great way of doing it. And I think the biggest thing for me out of all of this is keep talking, especially with the cynics, especially with the people who have got the loud voices. There's a tendency to want to ignore, but actually talk to them, embrace them, because actually they just want to be heard. They just want to be heard. So let's listen to them and bring them along. So I've got a quick exercise for you. If you've got a pen and paper, I'm going to give you a minute. Can you draw, physically draw, no writing, as in words, can you draw? How do you make toast? I'll give you a minute to do it. How do you make toast? Few more seconds. Okay. So I have got some examples of what we've had in the past. So take a look at some of those. So I wonder, did anybody actually say, I mean, look at that third one down on the left. It's just put the bread in the toaster. What else is there to it? But if you had somebody who had no clue, it's like, what even is bread? Where do we get bread from? Open up the packet, take the slice out, putting it into the toaster or under a grill. How do we know how to do all of that? Really interesting, such a simple, funny thing to do. And while we can't see each other's what you've done, 100% they'll be different. 100% they'll be different, you know? So we've all got different ideas and experiences. Or what's Barbara put? Mine was a 7-step process. Yeah, exactly. So you are obviously somebody who is about much more detail, Barbara. Barbara, I'm not a detailed person. I think I'm a bit more like that. Get the bread, put it in the toaster. Next exercise. So, but we need us both, Barbara. We need us both. So we've all got different ideas and different experiences about how to make toast. None of them are wrong. They're all correct. But when we start to compare and contrast with other people, we start to think, oh, flip, I'd not thought about that. Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. So this is really important because if we had a team that thought exactly like us, exactly the same, we are going to fall into groupthink territory. We don't just want to have mirrors surrounding us where our own personal views are reflected back. We want windows where we can see through and see some new things. So that's things like if we think about people who you naturally bounce ideas off, it tends to be very similar people. It tends to be people who, kind of think like us, sort of agree or validate our thinking, all of that. Now, occasionally, and even very often, that's great. We need that. But if we rely on those people too much, we're going to experience a set of cognitive biases, which means we're going to get stuck in that same pattern of behavior and thought. That's where group think happens. That's where it prevents us. It stops us because we just can't think outside the box at all. And so what I would encourage you to do following the session today is to have a think about who else have I got? Who could be, my outsider? Somebody from a different team, even a different organization who, isn't hung up with the same politics, the same psychological hang-ups that you are in the team and can look at it from a completely different perspective. Is there anybody that you could bounce an idea off in that respect? Have you got an accountability partner? Somebody that you say, hold me to this because it's important, but I know I'll get back on the treadmill of busyness and I won't do it, but I do want to do it, but I don't want to get sucked into business as usual. Get that great accountability partner that says, come on, Jen, you said you were going to do it. You said, it's important. How can you carve it down into small, manageable chunks so you feel good about yourself and you feel that you're making progress? So you might need somebody like that. You might need a hard truth teller. Somebody who says, no, I'm just going to call it. I think you're going down a rabbit hole. I'm going to call it. You're trying to win here and there's no winning. I'm going to call it. This is a no-win situation, and just absolutely telling you how it is, kindly, but transparently. And then finally, a devil's advocate. And this could be, like I could be Barbara's devil's advocate and Barbara could be mine. Because Barbara said, I like super detail. And I'm like, well, I don't. So this is when you can get something to a certain position. And I can say to Barbara, can I just run through what I'm going to do in terms of X? As I run through it, can you let me know if there's anything that I've missed? And inevitably, Barbara will see it because she's looking at it from a different angle. So it's not necessarily devil's advocate, as in she's not being deliberately provocative because she thinks differently. She's going to see it differently. And I could do the same for her to say, yeah, I think you're coming down a rabbit hole. You're forgetting about the reason why we're doing it. Let's just look up a big picture a bit more. It's that kind of thing. And Lisa has put in chat, clinical supervision can work great here as they fulfill all those functions and it helps your development too. Great point. Great point. So have a think about who those people might be for you. Okay, we need them and it's really useful. And clinical supervision is a brilliant example of that. A brilliant example. Thank you, Lisa. So here we are, planning to flex. fixing your foundations. We talked about that, really getting clear about what are the things that you do well, where are your strengths, where are your preferences, where's your energy levels, and using that as best you can to work on the challenging stuff. Leveraging uncertainty. I don't know, but it's okay. And between us, we're all good. Looking at ways to continue to lean into change and making sure that you extend your inner circle. So lots of great stuff there. The other thing that is also in your handout, and there's a little bit of a clause, as Sarah said earlier on about getting the handout. We've given you 4 really good resources, extra resources in there, some articles, some podcasts, etc., which are fab on change. So you've got that too. So we've got a bit of time to open up Q&A. And any questions that you've got?
Thanks, Jenny. Yes, we do. So thank you so much for delivering that really powerful and informative session. So we are now going to open up the Q&A, and you've still got time to send in your questions. So just click on the Q&A button, send the question to us anonymously if you like. But what you can also do is upvote the existing ones that you can see and that you want answering first, and we'll go to them straight away. So I'm going to take a look now to see what we've got the most upvotes on, Jenny. And here we go. Right. The question that's got the most upvotes is this. Managers and leaders will always be flourishing, but we still need to manage or lead our teams. How can I continue to support my team if I'm not flourishing myself? Which should I prioritise, helping myself or helping others?
Right. I can't imagine that there's not a single person who doesn't resonate with this. The times when you feel tired, when you feel weary, when it's just, I'm just so tired and I'm having to put on, the smile, etc. It can happen. It doesn't make you a bad manager. It doesn't make you a bad leader, but we've got to do it. And this is where it's a bit of a cliche, but the whole thing about fitting your own oxygen mask first. There is a reason why they say that. You cannot be helpful to anybody else if you are running on empty. So this is where I would recommend it's about making sure, going back to your inner circle, who are those people that you really trust? Who are those people that you can go to and just say, Sarah, I am really, really struggling with this at the moment, and I'm really struggling in terms of how to be my best for my people. How are you dealing with it? What are you doing? And feeling able to go to your core people, to talk things through, to get a bit of coaching. For those of you who've got clinical supervision, to use that. Thinking about the things that we mentioned earlier on, about where your energy is. Are you constantly doing the difficult things when you're running low on energy? Could you be a bit more mindful about how you lean into your day to day, so you are using your energy wisely? I'm not going to say it's going to be like that overnight, but there are definitely things that you can do in order to get even better at it and be that great leader, both for yourself and for your teams.
That's a really great answer. Thank you, Jenny. Now we've got a lot of upvotes on this next one as well. So this is, how can I continue to support my team when I don't feel confident about or agree with the change myself?
Yeah, that's going to happen as well a lot. You cannot work in a massive organisation like the NIHR, alongside the NHS, etc., and agree with absolutely everything. You just can't. And part of our role as leaders and managers is having to manage that, is having to go with the uncertainty and go with things that we might not 100% agree with. So this is around question, saying with the right people, whether it's with your boss or whether again it's with peers that you have got who can be the devil's advocate and look at things from a different perspective and say, I am struggling with this. I don't know whether I personally agree with it, but I've got to lead with it. How can you help me position it better with my teams? Because I suspect that my teams will feel the same. And so you get some input, and how do I share it? The other thing I will say as well is that I've seen to happen too often is that leaders, they try to align themselves with the teams by saying, look, it's stupid as far as I'm concerned. I don't know why they're doing it. It's ridiculous. I'll put that slide up for you, Sarah. Yeah. It's ridiculous. I don't know why they're doing it. It's stupid. And leaders do that to try and show their team, look, I agree with you, I'm with you. But actually, all it does is cause more anxiety, more frustration. Please don't do it. Share your thoughts with somebody who you trust, with a line manager, a leader, a mentor, and say, can you help me make sense of this so I can share the narrative in a better way? That would be my recommendation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jenny. So again, a lot of thoughts on this question too. Do you have any tips or coping tricks for prolonged periods of uncertainty and ensuring yourself and your team stay motivated and well supported?
I come back to what's our North Star? And our North Star very rarely changes. Your team is there for a reason, okay? And the purpose of your team is unlikely to change. Your research project might change, but you're still a research team. And so this is about, even if we don't know whether funding is going to be pulled on this or we don't know what's going to, today it hasn't. So we have to be the best that we can be today and immerse ourselves fully in this project, immerse ourselves and do it to the best of our ability, knowing that tomorrow we'll do the same again. And then when we get more information, then we will make some informed decisions. But as far as we're concerned, the purpose of your team doesn't change and today hasn't changed. So let's just lean into what we know to be true today. And as and when more information comes, then we will make some informed decisions. And that's really helpful for people when it's a prolonged period of time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jenny. Right, our next one. How do I ensure that people still have confidence in me when I don't know?
Yeah, that's a big thing, isn't it? When you've got an attack of the wobbles, and you just think, I don't have the confidence to do this at all. And this is about saying, it's a little bit going back to what I said earlier on. It's not about saying I haven't got a clue what to do, but I think there's something about being a human leader that really connects you with your team, and you also believing I do not need to have to know all the answers. I don't. What I do need to do is to be able to listen well and lead well and spot good answers. So this is when you come to your team and you say, so we haven't got as much clarity as ideally we'd like and as ideally I'd like, but between us all, the skills and strengths in this team always take my breath away. And I know we always pull through. So what we know now is this is what is the first thing that we need to tackle. So let's all get together, knowing that our skills and experience that we've got within the team, and let's look at the best way forward that we think that we can take it forward, and let's pool the ideas and the strengths together. Then you are leading the way. You are showing belief in your team, and you're chairing the meeting to get all the best ideas out, and everybody feels that they've got a voice. And when you start to get some ideas coming through, that gives you confidence back as well, and it gives you confidence in the team. So please do have a think about that, and I wish you well on it.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, our next one. Extending our inner circles is going to be harder in a virtual environment. How can I ensure I am doing this effectively in a way that still maintains trust with people?
Yeah, it is difficult from a virtual perspective. But this is the world that we live in now. So this is where transparency is really helpful. And I think it's around, you start to notice people, and the people who think in a certain way, the people who act in a certain way, and you know, on your Teams meetings and things like that, or Zoom meetings, and you start to say, oh, do you know what, Stacey always seems to come up with the good ideas about that, or Jim's brilliant at that sort of thing. And this is where I would be absolutely transparent and lean out and send an email to them and say, Stacey, I have noticed that in meetings you are really good at X. It is definitely not a strength of mine at all. And whilst I don't need it all the time, there are occasions where I need some more of that thinking. Would you be open to having ad hoc conversations with me when I need a bit more of that strength or that skill or that perspective for me just to run ideas past you at all? Now, what is the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is Stacey says, no, I haven't got time. But is she likely to do that? She's probably going to feel quite flattered that you've noticed something. So absolutely, of course, no worries at all. And although we're all really busy, we're all to give of yourself when it's a strength and it's something that comes easy to you and you're helping somebody else to do that. A 20-minute conversation can be absolutely amazing. So keep your eyes out for those people that would be really worth coming into your inner circle. Reach out to them, be transparent about your reasoning, and say, and you know, if I can reciprocate for you, let me do that for you too.
Thanks, Jenny. Now, given the time, this is going to be our last question.
Okay.
There are so many different roles and responsibilities throughout NIHR, each experiencing different changes and uncertainties. Is it realistic to have a single set framework that will support all of these?
Well, I don't know whether we've got a single set framework. What we've got is a mindset approach. All of these different things, there's lots of different changes, lots of different things going on. What we've given you are the tools to deal with the mindset and to deal with the people, because you can have the best processes, the best tech, the best whatever, but ultimately, you know, it's people that make things stick or go. So my argument would be what we've shared with you today is about mindset and about, doesn't matter what's going on, doesn't matter where we work in the health and social care sector, what part we do, we have got a mindset and an approach and a way to bring our people with us to have good conversations to deal with whatever uncertainty comes our way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jenny. And thank you for delivering this session today.
My
We
pleasure.
really hope that you've all found it beneficial and you feel able to implement some of the behaviours that we've explored today. As I mentioned at the start of the webinar for you joining us live, as we close this session, you're going to be asked to complete a quick evaluation form, and Stacey's also popped the link in the chat there. This is going to give you the opportunity to share your email address so we can send you a copy of the slides then. And if you have the time, please do give us your feedback. All of our past webinars can be found on the NIHR TV YouTube playlist, and that's under the Development and Support Webinars playlist. And I believe Stacey's also put a link to that in the chat box. You can also find some links for some other resources that we have, which are our online leadership e-learning modules. Those are hosted on NIHR Learn, and they're available to everyone to utilise. And there's also the NIHR Academy events page. This is so you can be kept up to date with any up and coming events that we're doing. Thank you all for your time today. We really hope that you've enjoyed this session and the rest of your day. And as always, if you've got any questions or queries, you can always contact a member of our team, which is the development and support team, and the email address for us has been provided in the chat box. So thank you and goodbye.